Um, I had an opportunity to have a couple of days off from work, so I figured I'd, post something and upload it because it's been a couple of days since the last upload. Uh, kind of wanted to talk about something I kind of thought about, something I've been thinking. I've always felt this way. I never really had an opportunity or a platform to share it or a means to like elaborate on it. But I've had conversations with a lot of people at work and in different places, and I've always talked to them about the curse of intellect. How intelligence sometimes can be a burden. The burden of possessing intellect and possessing a high intelligence and being recognized for possessing that. A lot of times, and you've seen this play out many ways in families, just on TV, movies. You have a family, you have kids, you have firstborn, middle child, so forth, and um, the one that was always the good student, and the one that followed all the rules, and the one that was always doing the right things. Um, it seemed like it would work out that eventually they would. Um, do the opposite of that, or they would have a spell or a period where they would explore, behavior and actions that were a polar opposite to how they were, as opposed to the quote unquote problem child, who was constantly in trouble or constantly demanding attention and needing, the attention of everyone around because of what they're doing or the consequence of their actions. Um, constant supervision, constant, reprimand, discipline, and and then in cases they actually turn out to become, productive people, because of the constant monitoring. And you've seen it. I've seen it in my family. I've seen it, where one sibling is accepted at one level, but then you have another sibling that, gets a little bit more acceptance or a little bit more tolerance or a little bit more turning a blind eye to as it pertains to certain things and actions and, you know, not necessarily telling them and being, accountable and holding them accountable when they make mistakes and when they do wrong and they are punished, and it just seems that some parents, and it happens a lot, some parents just have a blind eye towards some of their children, and then they just seem to be extremely critical of others. So I'm thinking about the burden of intellect, and I'm thinking about how it feels to possess that, how it feels to always be considered as the one that is on point, on track. We never have to worry about him. We do not have to worry about her. They always do the right thing. They're dependable. You can count on them. They get it the first time. They don't require, being told more than once in many occasions. And that can be taxing on an individual. It's interesting that people seem to forget about the people who are not causing trouble. Um, they need guidance as well. They need supervision too. They need people to expend energy and just focus on them as well. And I see it all the time. People say, well, you're smart, you should do well in school. You're intelligent, you should do well on this job. You should do well on this test. And there are just these lofty expectations that people place upon, individuals who may be intellectual, may be intelligent, gifted children, people that just possess a high level of, intellect, high IQ, people that are truly intelligent, and it can be burdensome. A lot of times, you're watching something and it's extremely difficult to be fooled or for a plot twist to catch you off guard or for you not to understand foreshadowing or to not understand the process that is in place, whether it's a book, a play, a movie, TV, anything that's happening in your life, you just kind of just identify it quickly, and a lot of people may be around you and they may just say, oh, you're a spoiler, or, you act like you know everything that's going to happen. And it's not the case. It's just that you're just aware, and you're on a plane where your ability to observe is heightened, and you identify and you observe and you see things, and it doesn't take too much for the cognitive, cognitive process to take place for you to associate one thing with another. So, I mean, I'm not going to talk long, but I would just like to share that it can be extremely burdensome. It can be extremely, um, unfair to think that just because someone possesses intelligence and just because we identify them as the smart person or the nerd or the brain, that they don't have, some of the same issues or the same, feelings of insecurity or the same apprehension or trepidation when it comes to doing something new. Even if they learn it in an accelerated manner or at an accelerated pace, they still are subjective to the same feelings that all humanity is because we're people. Perhaps just reach out and just see where their mind is, see what they're thinking about, even if you don't understand it, or even if some of the jargon, some of the speech may go over your head, but just the fact that you showed an interest allows them to speak about that, to share it, and then the feedback that they get from you, whether it's verbal or nonverbal, whether it's body language, they can process that, and you can contribute to help them, cultivate and then even better their idea, their hypothesis, their prototypes, their theory, and you're contributing to the learning process, and you are, and on a level you're an intellectual because it's an exchange of ideas. So don't shun them, don't laugh at them, don't make disparaging remarks, even if they are backhanded compliments about professor this or brainiac that. I mean, it still puts a negative connotation, and it kind of puts people in a position to be defensive, and then you rob yourself or you rob somebody else of the benefit of someone that may possess some knowledge you don't have, but you can learn from it, or you can actually add to your repertoire of things, or put something else into your mind that you didn't know about, and you could potentially be robbed of that just because you don't understand it, or we don't give the credit or the proper attention to what they're going through or how they feel. So, you know, try to get it, look at it from that perspective. We understand how people who possess beauty don't feel beautiful and how they need to have that reassurance. And then we understand people that have confidence issues and how it's important for them to have that confidence, reaffirmed and reassured and strengthened. The intellectual needs to be reassured and reaffirmed and strengthened as well. They still thrive and welcome conversation and dialogue and back and forth. And just like somebody shouldn't be intimidated by the pretty girl or the very attractive guy because you think that, they're out of your league, or they may have an attitude where you can't approach them. It's the same way with someone that's extremely intelligent or extremely, smart, or just someone that is an intellectual. They are not unapproachable. You can speak to them, you can approach them, you can learn, and they can learn from you. And I think that is the thing that is missing. We don't give credit to ourselves and credit to one another. You can learn from the intellectual, and the intellectual learns a lot from every interaction and everything that they do and every person that they speak to. So just I wanted to share that just being smart isn't enough. You have to work, you have to apply it, and then you have to use it responsibly. And there are many people who were intelligent and had potential, but yet they have nothing to show for it. So it's a commodity that must be, you know, applied, and it must be, utilized and spent, properly. And not everybody has mastered that. And that ties into the burden, the curse of being an intellectual, because people feel like you have it figured out. But perhaps if people would just be less discriminating and less prejudiced in their thinking, they could let a few of us in to learn from us, and then allow us the pleasure and the opportunity to learn from you, because that's a collective partnership, and that's like a symbiotic relationship, and we both benefit. Both of you benefit, and you're both walking away with something that you didn't have before. Just something to think about.